I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
We're good to go.
Okay, that's great. Okay, members of the board, thank you for accommodating this last minute change. We are calling this meeting of the Oakville Public Library Board to order for Thursday, the 16th of May, 2024. Before we commence our meeting tonight, I'd just like to read our territorial acknowledgement. The Oakville Public Library is situated on the Treaty Number 14 and Treaty Number 22 treaty lands and territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the traditional territory of the Huron-Wendat and the Haudenosaunee. Oakville is currently home to many different First Nations, Inuit, and Métis peoples. Regardless of where we come from, we are all interconnected through the land that we live on, the water that we use, and the air that we breathe. We are committed to a continuous learning journey and allyship. We seek to elevate Indigenous voices and lived experience to cultivate reconciliation in the town of Oakville. Madam Committee Clerk, do we have any regrets this evening?
We have regrets from Andrew Cashman.
Right, thank you. Members of the board, I want to draw, sorry, I forgot pecuniary interest. Members of the board, based on tonight's agenda, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest to declare at this time? Any overdue library book fines or anything you need to tell us about right now? Okay, good. Seeing none, we'll move on. You've had your minutes circulated from our last board meeting, as well as the special meeting that we held to hear the library's master plan. Can I get a motion to approve those two sets of minutes, please? Okay. Jessica, are you grabbing the motions and the seconds? I saw Rod's hands up for a mover. I'm not seeing everybody on screen, unfortunately. Hold on, let me just change my view.
I'm seeing Rod's hand and then nobody else's.
Okay, can I get a seconder? Oh, sorry, Rebecca's hand.
Oh, thank you.
I just fixed my screen. I've got everybody like the Brady Bunch now, so thank you. So it's been moved and seconded. Are there any comments, questions, errors, or omissions? All in favor of the approval of the minutes as circulated? Thank you, those are approved. Members of the board, we have 3 items on our consent agenda this evening. Would anybody like to separate any of those, or are we prepared to move the staff recommendations? And for the sake of the public who might be watching, 5.1 is the Oakville Public Library key agenda items. 5.2 is health and safety report, and 5.3 is an employee retention and turnover metrics report. Would anybody like to separate one of those things, Ray?
No, Councillor, no, I just moving acceptance all 3. 5.1, okay. 5.2, and 5.3.
Thanks, Ray. Rod, did you have a question, or are you seconding?
No, I have a question about the health and safety report. We'd agreed that there would be a sentence or 2 added to the effect that site inspections had taken place at our 7 branches, that being fairly significant and
yes,
a good thing from a due diligence perspective. And it was added to the March one, but unless I'm missing it, I don't see it in this one.
Tara, do you have a comment on that?
No, I didn't realize that the board wanted that statement every month. We can include it moving forward.
Would it be okay to amend the document? So we'll proceed to approve the document as amended and just have that corrected for the minutes, if that's okay. Will that work?
I will, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair. I will note that once it's published on opl.ca, we can't take it down, but we could add a memo attached to it with the new one.
Okay, let's do that. Will that suffice, Rod?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Will you second the 3 items for me as well? Ray's moved them.
Yes.
Thank you. Anybody else like to separate 5.1 through 5.3? Not seeing anything. That's been moved and seconded by Ray and Rod. All in favor? The recommendations are carried, and there will be a notation with respect to the site visits added to 5.2 as per the discussion. We do not have any confidential consent items, but I do know we have a confidential discussion item later on if you want to go into camera for that. We start our our regular discussion items with 7.1, the financial statement report for May 16th, 2024. And that is as of year end December 31st, 2023. And the motion tonight is approval. Who's going to lead us through this?
It will.
Okay. Hi,
Good
Jade.
evening. Hi. Good evening, and thanks for the opportunity to join you tonight. As everyone just said, I'm Jade. I'm the manager of accounting at the town of Oakville, and I'm here related to two reports this evening. So item 7.1 and 7.2 on your agenda, which are the 2023 financial statements, where I'll highlight a couple of items for the board. And then after this, I'll introduce the library's external auditors, KPMG, to present their audit findings report on the financial statements. So in terms of item 7.1 on the agenda, the recommendation before you is to approve the 2023 financial statements, and the staff report contains more detailed information, but there is a few items that I'd like to touch on. The first is that KPMG is prepared to provide the library with an unqualified or clean audit opinion, and shortly they'll walk us through how they came up with that and the various aspects of their audit. And the second is that the operating surplus repaid to the town reported on the statement of operations and accumulated surplus is within $50 of the detailed variance report that you received in February. And so there was just a small adjustment made in preparation for the audit. So it's logical to think that if any surplus funds were repaid to the town, that the financial statements wouldn't show a surplus, when in fact they show approximately $104,000. And just as a reminder, note 6 to the financial statements reconciles this back to zero. And I did include a chart in the report with the detailed descriptions of what the reconciling items are. And so after the repayment to the town of the excess operating funds, the surplus you see on the financial statements relates to the difference between the accounting standards versus budget treatment for the collections and the employee future benefits liability. And then it also includes the change in development reserve and Oakville Community Foundation funds, which isn't repaid to the town as they're library specific funds. And so I'll now turn things over to Carlos Alvarez and Matt Ciradelli from KPMG, who will present the audit findings report, as it's important to hear their comments before any motion is put forth on the statements. And then after their presentation, I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have related to or for management on either of these two reports.
Thanks, Jade. Okay, Carlos and Matthew, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Knoll and members of the committee. My name is Carlos Alvarez, as Jade introduced. I'm with KPMG and I'm joined by my colleague, Matt Ciardelli. We should be familiar faces as we've been doing the audit for several years. For those following along in their package, the title page that you see on screen is page number 40 in your package. And we will not comment on every single page, but what we would like to do is comment on those items that we feel would be considered to be most material and significant to bring forward to your attention. So if we may, we can turn in a few slides to page number 43 of the package. In terms of the audit highlights, effectively, with this being the middle of May, we are effectively done in terms of our core audit procedures. The only item that would be remaining from our perspective is ultimately the board approval of the financial statements themselves. Once that is in hand, I will be able to proceed and sign the independent auditor's report. From a regulatory standpoint, both in terms of how the debits and credits come together, and as well as the rules that Matt and I and the audit team need to abide by, there were a few changes, both from an accounting standpoint and an auditing standpoint. Some of those changes did not have any material impact on you as an organization, which is a little bit different than some other organizations that exist in the public sector. And again, we'll make some highlights as we go through the report. As auditors, we are hired to scrub your numbers. Certainly, we try our hardest to detect misstatements. In the top right-hand section of the slide, in terms of both uncorrected and corrected, we have no matters to report. So effectively, it is a clean sheet, which certainly is what I would call the gold standard, from an audit perspective, even though we certainly tried our hardest to detect any misstatements. So we're comfortable, that the audit package that was provided to us was not only complete, but also it was accurate. And we're happy with the disclosures in your financial statements, that they contain all of the disclosures that you should have. Also, from a control deficiency perspective, we do map out your processes, and based on the results of our procedures, we can confirm to all of you that there were no significant deficiencies of any sort, so nothing from a control standpoint. Moving along further in the audit findings report, to the next page. Oh, sorry, the other way. Again, just in terms of status, the 2 bullet points here are very customary in terms of what we expect to be outstanding at this point in time. So there's nothing else remaining. Moving ahead, another slide. As a reminder, for every audit in Canada, we as auditors are always required to respond to 2 specific risks. And they both center around the topic of fraud. And one is the risk associated with management override of controls. And the second risk is associated with manipulation of revenues. So this would be fraudulent revenue recognition. I can confirm to all members of the committee that based on everything that we looked at, all of the source documentation that we examined, all of the journal entries that we reviewed, that there was nothing that we considered to be suspicious, no actual instances of fraud. So all of the transactions that we examined as part of our process were all above board. So nothing on the topic of fraud. In terms of what I would call the meat and potatoes of the audit, we have a few slides, just a few slides further in the report. And I'll let Matt go through some of these in just a little brief detail.
Yes, thanks very much, Carlos. And hopefully everybody can hear me, but do please let me know if otherwise.
You're good.
Okay, thank you very much, Councillor Noel. What you see on the slide here, as Carlos said, is what we like to call the meat and potatoes of the audit. This is where we spend the majority of our time and audit focus. Many of these areas would be consistent with what you'd expect us to audit based on your nature as a library. I'll talk from the top down, investments and related income. The portfolio is relatively low complexity and third-party information is readily available to us as auditors. So we are able to vouch the cost and market values of the investments in the portfolio held by the Oakville Community Fund and others. And we do look at the cost versus market to determine whether or not there are any indicators of impairment. At this time, we had none identified, so there was no need to propose a write-down of the portfolio. And we found that both the value as at year end and the income for the year as at December 31 was complete and accurate. In the middle, tangible capital assets. This represents the library's collections of books and similar materials. Those are long-lived assets for accounting purposes in the public sector, and thus the library capitalizes them for accounting purposes and amortizes them over time rather than recognizing as an expense 100% upon purchase. So we look at the list of all of the collections. We ensure that the current year's starting point carries forward from the prior year ending point, and that all of the additions or disposals to that balance are appropriate and meet the required criteria. We also look to make sure that the annual amortization or depreciation for accounting purposes is in line with the library's policies. We had nothing to report in that regard. I will say on both of these two topics, there were accounting standards changes that needed to be considered by the library. As Carlos mentioned, they did not have a material impact, but we will talk about those in a little bit more in a couple of minutes on another slide. The last item on this page, grants. So as you know, the vast majority of the revenue in any given year for the library board is the operating grant from the town. Of course, very easy for us as auditors to communicate with the town and the library and observe the approved budgeted amounts to make sure that both sides have recognized the correct amount with respect to the operating grant. We also look at other grants from the province and other sources of revenue, such as donations and user fees on a sample basis. We do test a sample of those transactions against third-party evidence or cash receipt, and we have no matters to bring to your attention. Everything we saw there was above board, as Carlos said, was the case for the audit in general. If we could go to the next slide. Thank you. Two more areas of focus that we do spend some time on during the audit. The first is the post-employment benefit liability, or employee future benefits. Those that have seen our presentation before know that this is an area of estimate that does require management to work with a third-party actuary in order to compute each year. The actuary prepared a full new valuation report in the prior year and rolled that forward to December 31, 2023. And at that time last year during the audit, we did look at all of the data provided to the actuary to make sure that they were given an appropriate starting point. This year in the audit, we reviewed all of the assumptions that the actuary used in their report during the roll forward. We do benchmark those assumptions against other points of data that we would expect to see in a similar entity within the public sector. You can see here that the discount rate the actuary used decreased slightly. They discounted the future liability to present value at 4.6 this year as opposed to 5 in the previous year, which was found to be reasonable compared to those benchmarks. And lastly, the financial statement notes continue to disclose, as required by the public sector, some of the information that goes into this estimate. Lastly, operating expenses, including payroll-related accruals. We do test a sample of non-payroll expenses using some of our sampling software. We go to invoice or equivalent to look at those, and we supplement that work with a mix of substantive and analytical procedures over the payroll expenses, which are the most material. We also look at cutoff for both. So we look at the year-end accruals for payroll and operating expenses to ensure any amounts physically paid after the year-end cutoff date that pertained to the fiscal period under audit were appropriately accounted for. So no matters to bring to your attention with respect to any misstatements in these areas.
So we can skip ahead a few pages. So again, it was a clean sheet, so no misstatements to discuss. From a accounting policy and practice perspective, the two new standards, one is known as ARO. That is an acronym. That means Asset Retirement Obligation. That was a really big new standard for all those in the public sector world, that have significant and generally older tangible capital assets. In a nutshell, if you think of materials such as lead or asbestos that may be contained in a building as an example, if you have any such materials in any buildings that are being used today, this new standard changes the accounting such that you would have to recognize those costs of the eventual disposition or dismantling of that building and the removal of those items. Even though it might happen far in the future, you need to give recognition for those items today. So fundamentally, it was a pretty complicated standard, but for you as an organization, this had no significant impact. As well, in terms of the new financial instrument standard, again, It was not as significant as the ARO standard. Nonetheless, we still went through the process, and ultimately there was no significant impact, again, on you as an organization. Moving along to the next slide, page number 11. Again, we just provided some additional verbiage on those two new standards, but from our perspective, nothing else to mention on these two topics. Page number 12. We have included a few appendices. My plan was not to go through each and every one in any detail. Jade already made the comment that our audit report is unqualified. I can confirm that is the case. It is clean, with no reservations. And the only other topic that I would like to comment on is that if you were to look at our audit plans and audit findings reports, over the past several years, we've included topics such as cybersecurity, ESG. One of the new topics, for all organizations is artificial intelligence and what that means for an organization. We have not included a lot of material specifically in this audit findings report, but that doesn't mean it's not important. Again, cybersecurity, I'm sure we all are fully aware of incidents that have happened, across a number of municipalities and other organizations in Ontario. Our comment, to you as an organization is continue to invest in evolving how you defend against those that wish to perpetrate against you. From an ESG perspective, my overriding comment would be there are so many topics within the ESG universe where many clients are asking, for support from us is trying to narrow it down to 4 or 5 items. And again, on the artificial intelligence, many clients are asking, what does this mean for us? Happy to entertain discussions at a later date, but we're entertaining questions about how do we change our employee policies? What can our employees use? What can they not use? And how do we seize the benefits of AI in terms of our processes? So I just wanted to make those quick comments on those 3 topics, just because I do feel that they are important. From an audit perspective, again, if you were to line up these financial statements with the prior year, the majority of the language would be consistent. And with that, that would cover, what I would call all of the formal topics that certainly I wanted to bring forward, that we wanted to bring forward to your attention. So with that, I will pause and back over to the chair.
Thank you for the presentation. You've already elicited one question. I see Ray Chisholm has a question. Go ahead, Ray, you have the floor. But we can't hear you. First one tonight.
Can't read lips? What's the matter with you? Anyways, question, just to refer back to the capital assets retirement. I need a little bit more clarity on that. Just as a simple way of looking at it, I think you said it was very complex. For an example, if we're closing down or retiring Central Library, the building itself, is it within the accounting to put money in reserves in the future to for decommissioning or deconstruction of that asset? Is that what we're saying?
For you, the chair, it is not about recognizing today the eventual cost of dismantling. It only relates to specific costs that under a specific legislation, whether it's a provincial legislation or a federal legislation that governs, that you need to remove certain materials, such as asbestos, that have a legislative requirement, as opposed to your question, which I think was framed on, the entire cost of dismantling an asset.
Okay. No, that clarifies, sir. Thank you.
Just on that note, just for extra clarification, I mean, the fact is that the building itself belongs to the town. I would assume that those liabilities and those costs would be borne by the municipality as opposed to the library. Would that be accurate?
Yes,
correct, Chair.
to the chair, you are correct. It is ultimately who controls the asset
Right.
that has to record any and all obligations associated with that asset.
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted clarity because that would be a massively large piece of liability that would dwarf our finances, I think. So, okay. Further questions or comments? I'm not seeing. Oh, Kelso, you're up next. Celso, you're up next.
Yeah, I have a
before the end of our term, I will have your name pronounced correctly every time.
no problem. I have a question for staff. Is it okay to ask it now about
Yes.
this topic?
Yeah.
So this is with regards to on page 13, there is a note about how much we've spent on electronic resources, and it's severely under budget, which sort of is interesting because we talk so much about how electronic resources are raising in price and more popular within our constituency. So is this because of the capitalization issue that we're under budget, meaning that we're still spending, we're just not recognizing that as expense? Is that the reason why we're under budget on that particular line? Or are we truly underspent when it comes to electronic resources?
Through the chair to the board member, you're correct. It's the capitalization of it. So when we budgeted the dollar figure, we budgeted 1.2 million. And so the actuals as the expense was 620,000, which was just related to the electronic piece, but there were additional resources for the collection, and the total of the additions for that was about 785,000. So really, if you took the 785 plus the 600, that's where that's what you would need to compare from that budgeted figure.
Perfect.
And so the reason why we expense the electronic ones is it doesn't have the same lifespan as the regular collection.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the question. Further comments? Oh, we're getting a couple. Rod, you're up next. You have the floor.
Yes, I think this question is for Jade, but I'm not sure. But I noticed in one of the reports, the financial statement report, there's a reference to some amounts of transfers were withheld during the year because of underspending.
Point of order, Councillor.
Sorry.
Not to apologize, but are we bouncing from one report to another, or are we just dealing? I'm getting a little confused what reports we're talking about here. So can we keep it?
So I've kind of merged 1 and 2 together because they're related. But if you have a question, if you could be very specific as to which report you're referring to, so that we can all follow along.
Great, thank you.
Thanks, Ray. Good call. Rod, which report are you referring to?
Well, sorry, if it's the opinion of the chair or the group that we should just hold on this, I was referring to something in the financial statement report.
That's number 1. That's fine. No, we just want so everybody can follow along. That's all.
All right. And I think therefore my question is for Jade, but it might be for the auditing team. I'm not sure. And I'm asking, I notice in there, it talks about transfers were withheld during the year because of underspending. Probably, I'm going to guess it was gapping in some staff. And at the end of the year, we have a surplus of the 195K. So I'm asking if you know the figure from those transfers during the year, how much was withheld because money was not being spent by the library board and the library.
I believe that the figure is 122,000, and so it was transfers that were going to happen from the town to the library. But throughout the year, as we were monitoring, there was a surplus, and the forecast was that it would be in a surplus. The library would be in a surplus position. So these transfers didn't occur as if the money was unspent. It would just have been returned at the end of the year.
Thank you for that. I'd just like to throw this out for the board's consideration for a future meeting if we're again in a situation where we can't afford ebooks, and Celso was just commenting on that as well. We have, number one, a surplus that year, number two, monies withheld. The total between the two for 2023 was $317,000. Under the Public Libraries Act, we can go back to council in year, such as September, October, November, and say, could we perhaps reapply some of our funding to ebooks in order to pay for these high costs that are in demand and so on. We don't have to do the whole amount of the withheld transfers or the projected surplus. We could just ask for 50 or 60K or something like that. I'd just like to put that out there as an idea because I didn't know about the transfers withheld until this meeting. And it is a fairly substantial amount of money if you look at the surplus plus the transfers withheld.
Tara, do you want to take a shot at that?
Sure. Yeah, I will say that part of the projections that we do is during the year with finance, we do look at what our projected surplus is, and then we work with finance in the town to redirect money as needed. So for the past number of years, we've reallocated probably about $100,000 out of the surplus every year to ebooks. So we are doing that. Now that there becomes a point where I don't feel comfortable that we redeploy the total surplus to it. And these are through conversations with the town and the town finance about what's appropriate for us to redeploy to make sure that we commit to the services that we budget for every year. Lynn Horler, a previous town treasurer, was always very much focused on that. A budget is a promise, and that we need to deliver on that promise. And then as we gain a surplus, which for the past number of years have been related on staff movement, that we have redeployed that out into additional ebook funding where needed. So we do that, is basically the short answer.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rod. Thanks, Tara. Further comments or questions? Okay, so we are dealing with items 7.1 and 7.2 at this time. 7.1 is the approval of the draft statements, and 7.2 is the receipt of the auditor's report. Let's start with 7.1. Can I get a motion to approve the draft statements? Thank you, Ray. Can I get a seconder, please? Thanks, Celso. Last call for comments, questions? All in favor? Those are approved. Thank you. Moving on to 7.2, that's the receipt of the financial, what's it called? The audit report. My agenda just shut down. Give me 1 second here. I don't know why I did that. I love eScribe so much. That was for you, Jessica.
Your feedback has been noted for the clerk's department.
Yeah, it had no reason to shut down, and it did. Almost there. Anyway, 7.1 is the audit report. So can I get a motion to receive the audit report, please? The clean audit report, I would point out. Thanks, Rebecca. Is there a seconder? Thanks, Celso. Further comments? Oh, Rod, did you have a question? Or
no, sorry, I was trying to second.
Thank you. Thank you for your assistance. All in favor of the receipt of that report? And that is carried. Thank you. To our auditors, thanks again for another successful year. Thanks for your diligence and not finding anything. And thanks to the staff for running a clean set of books. We appreciate Jade and the entire team as well as our library team. So thank you, everybody. Okay, let's move on to, and Matt and Carlos, you can take off now. I'm sure you got better things to do than watch us.
Okay, thank you and have a great evening. We'll
see you next year.
Yes, take care, everyone.
7.3 is the comprehensive financial my agenda's back. Comprehensive financial report as of March 31st, 2024. I assume there's no particular report on this, but are there presentation on this, but are there any questions? Tara, did you want to comment on it or?
No, just to say that, it's Q1, it's early days, but I just to bounce a little bit on what I just said is, you will see that our projected surplus is significantly lower than it has in the last number of years, and we're very pleased with that. That has a lot to do with the stability that we're finding within the staff after the last couple of years with a lot of staff movement. So we're hoping to continue that through and definitely keep our surplus as tight as possible to make sure that we're delivering on that budgetary promises.
Thank you. Budget is a promise.
Budget is a promise.
Budget is a promise. For comments or questions on that? Okay, Meredith, you have a question or a comment?
Yeah, so for 7.3, on page 3, I had a question about the library development reserve. And apologies if we covered this when this first happened, but just about the portion of the staff salaries that's being covered by reserves. Was that just a one-time thing, or was that the plan that each year those positions will be funded out of reserves?
So it's a bit of both. So as part of the 2024 budget, the board approved us reallocating funding for a customer information specialist at Glen Abbey. The intent is only to do that a one time. It will then be rolled up into the 16-mile staffing complement as part of the new branch. However, we do pay for our fund development coordinator is partially paid for out of development. And that's been ongoing, that's been a practice. I don't remember the exact amount off the top of my head. It isn't their full salary, but that they tie together, right? So that what they raise, again, helps pay for themselves as part of that.
Right, okay. Okay, yeah, because I also had, because later on, I also, in a couple of subsequent paragraphs, it talks about total donation revenue being targeted for 100,000. And that seemed low relative to the salary of the development coordinator. And so I was just curious, like, does that 100,000, does that fully capture kind of the revenue that's being generated as a result of this position?
So we've just hired a brand new fund development coordinator, and so we're looking to shift a little bit how we do fundraising. Traditionally, it's been a lot of, I would call, passive fundraising. So we send out our our emails and we do a mailing campaign twice a year. And just with those, we tend to raise between $100,000 and $130,000. However, we are looking to expand that more potentially into events or broader pieces. And the capital campaign that we're looking to run for Central will tie into that. But you're right, that what we raise each year, there's only a percentage that goes towards the fund development coordinator, and we're still in the process of sorting that out in terms of getting to a place where having a full-time fundraiser eventually pays for themselves plus. And it is, I think, as we grow and mature that portfolio that we'll get there. But it is something that we're bringing more information about the capital campaign pieces and some of the future of fundraising in June. So I can make sure that we incorporate some of that.
Okay, great, thanks.
Thanks, Meredith. Further comments or questions? Okay, can I get a motion to receive? Oh, hold on, I have a question. I knew somebody had a question. This is loosely related, but because it's mentioned, I feel comfortable asking. Can we get an update on the newspaper digitization project? It is referred to in the report, and I haven't heard anything in a while.
Yes, actually, if Joe is on.
I see his name.
It will not let me start my video.
There you go.
Sorry, start my video. Oh, there we go.
There you go.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. The report is in the RFP process. So we had to prioritize a bunch of RFPs for 16 Mile and that build first. But we are currently in, it's with purchasing right now, the RFP, to find the vendor to digitize the newspaper. So it is 100% in the works.
What is the, what's the deadline for proposals?
The proposal, it's sitting with our purchasing department right now in terms of the RFP to bring it out. So it has not officially launched yet, Council and all, but it will. We're hoping before the end of the month, and with about a 5-week turnaround time from there. So I would say we're looking at probably July before we have a vendor to make the digitization.
Can you make a particular note to send a memo to the board as you make progress on this? Because obviously this is an important board initiative. And we would really like to, I'm speaking out, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but I certainly, and I know Councillor Chisholm would be as well, very, very interested in perhaps the rest of the board and how this progresses. Secondary question is, have we taken steps to make sure that all the materials are still safe and well looked after as we await this process to begin?
Yes, I mean, we have not brought them externally or done anything outside, but they are frequently checked upon. They're frequently kind of regarded there. They're still at Woodside. So, I mean, there is still an inherent risk there. But I mean, in terms of in a safe storage, as safe as we could possibly go internally, that's where they reside. So
we've had flooding. We've had flooding at Woodside before, have we not?
Not in that specific area, but yes, there has been flooding in Woodside.
I mean, they're not on the floor.
Okay.
So they are up, and we do also have temperature gauges in there that staff check to make sure that it's kept at the temperature that's needed. It is the best location for them up until we can digitize them.
Okay. But based on what you're saying, just to summarize, it sounds like we are in a position to potentially get this project under full steam this year at some point.
Yeah.
Oh,
and I will add that to my CEO update. I normally do like the major projects. I will add this actually.
Yeah, that'd be great.
You'll know that you'll always get an update as part of my CEO piece.
Thank you. That'd be great. Yeah. If we could, as a standing item, that'd be wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Last chance for comments or questions. Motion to receive the report from 7.3. Thank you. Who's here? Meredith, and who's my seconder? Ray, thank you. All in favor? That's carried. Thanks. Performance and measures report.
This is our Q1 report. We have taken the opportunity of a new year to revamp it significantly. We've made quite a bit of changes with Caitlin coming on board in January. She has a little bit of a different lens and made some recommendations that I'm quite excited to bring forward to you. So we did change some of the groupings rather than separate out a lot of things. We made branch services because I think it speaks to looking at them as a whole to see the impact that it has on the different branches. It does overall is a good news story. We're definitely seeing return and even growth post-pandemic. There are areas I think it highlights that we do need to see improvement with. Cardholders is definitely an area, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about customer satisfaction and some of those other pieces in further reports. But I'm happy to take questions, comments about the new graphs and the new charts.
So you have the floor. Yeah, so interesting in the context of our discussion last week, right? So 58% of circulation in 2 branches, right? It's it's higher than expected. And also 62% of branch services in that the same 2 branches. So I think this sort of underlines the point that school and community center together is what drives that, because that's I think what's unique about those 2 places, right? Iroquois Ridge and Glen Abbey. So I think this is important information for that for the master plan that as we were discussing yesterday. Interestingly enough, when it comes to foot traffic, is a different story, and because White Oaks has such a significant foot traffic despite not as much circulation. So I think that's what the school brings to that location, which is good too, right? So I think that's important information for the master plan. So that's not a question, it's just a comment. I do have a question though. When it comes to children's programs, are they offered and attended equally in every branch, or does it follow the same pattern as circulation and foot traffic and branch services?
So in terms of attendance, we definitely see higher attendance at some locations versus others. I haven't actually checked in on them, but one of the reasons, when we renovated Glen Abbey back in 2019 into 2020, we expanded the program room because we were having to cap how many people could attend some of the story times just based on the size of the program room. We were seeing some pretty significant growth. It wasn't unusual to see 50 or 60 people in that. You're looking at 16 Mile, we're more likely to see 8 to 12. But also the size and the catchment area of those are significantly different. And we do note that people will travel around because some people like the big story times and some people like the smaller story times. And I'm using story time because that's a program that we run at all branches numerous times during the week. Although we are actually trying some new things. Traditionally, we've offered that in the morning, but we've actually started to offer some in the afternoon, and we're actually seeing some great success with that, where people are coming in after their post-lunch nap. And so it's been fun to kind of tweak some of that and to kind of explore new options for that. But to answer your question, attendance is different from location to location.
And largely concentrated in the same branches where we have more circulation, or not necessarily?
I would say that Glen Abbey and Iroquois Ridge would have significant, but I'd also say Central also gets its share. Although, you know, sometimes we also get libraries where they have daycares nearby and the whole daycare will come, right? So it's sometimes not easy to compare apples to apples in that situation. And we offer story times in other languages now too, which again will sometimes cause obviously a smaller demographic, but I think shows a sense of belonging that we're trying to exhibit in the library.
Yeah, thank you. The reason behind the question is I think children's programs are also an important portion of what the library represents, right, to the community, and that therefore should also be an important piece of information as we consider new libraries out there and where. So that's where I'm trying to get to. So thank you for the information.
Yep.
Further comments or questions? Okay, I have one. Oh, I'll defer to Meredith.
Thanks, sorry. Yeah, overall, I just some great feedback about the layout, the comprehensive nature, and the new graph structure. I also really appreciate taking in the feedback of comparing pre-COVID versus post-COVID, so we can see how the demand and activity has rebounded since before the shutdown. And just one quick observation, I think it's on page 3, just one of the under languages, it's 14% is shown as red when it should be green because it looks like it was a positive growth, not a negative growth in growth of different languages, which was an interesting observation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Meredith. Further comments, questions? I'm never going to get mine in, am I? Rebecca, you're up next.
Sorry. And again,
I'm
this
just
is
joking.
more of like a comment as well, but I loved, I just wanted to ask you, Tara, if there's anything that surprised you in this latest data. And second, I just love the growth in the library of things. And I'm sure you're excited to see that too, and like look forward to adding more things now that people have such an appetite for it.
No, and that was one of the things that the breaking it out by physical circulation type, that was something that we had multiple conversations about how to do that slice and dice, because you can go with a million different ways with that. We have a lot of different genres, a lot of different collections. But the library of things was particularly interesting for me as well, especially since, you know, that is an area that we're interested in growing, but also is one I answer a lot of questions about when I go out into the community. They're like, really, life jackets? Is that something that the library should be doing? And so being able to now measure it against some of our other collections and the growth and seeing the interest from people. And I think, you know, as we continue to have conversations about how we grow that over the next number of years will inform that even further. Again, and I think, you know, some of the, and going back to the master plan discussion is just understanding the branches better. And then, you know, Caitlin and I were even having a conversation with, you know, based on some of the conversation from last week and again today is how we can further break it down, right? Because yes, we see Glen Abbey, we see Iroquois Ridge, you know, there's Clearview, there's Woodside, but Glen Abbey and Iroquois Ridge are also the bigger branches, like they're significantly larger, right? So and they offer some different services, and so how can we we make them more like for a clearer comparison. I mean, there's clear differences and considerations as we move forward. And I think, you know, as came through the recommendations in the master plan, connecting it in with rec centers and schools definitely is a recipe for success. But we want to make sure we don't miss anything there as well.
Thanks, Rebecca. Okay, I'm getting my question no matter what. So on these, my agenda just crashed again. So I don't remember this actual section number, but the section number that refers to the web sessions, it talks about the fact that the 63% increase is as a result of a Google, I think it's GA4 change. Can you explain that a little bit?
I'm hoping that Joe can explain that better than I can.
Sorry, Jeff, what page? You have the...
I don't have the page because I no longer have my agenda up. I'm waiting for my computer to hopefully reboot and make it show up. So
I think it's page 13 or page 122, depending on what page number you're looking at. It talks about the 63% increase in bibliocommons sessions.
Yeah, that's it.
Yes.
And also web
related to Google Analytics.
Yeah, for sure. So the website is fundamentally different now than it was before. So now with the single sign-on, right, it's like the way customers would interact with the website brings them in and out of our website almost every single time, right? So it depends on the usage, but you'll have again, the increase in bibliocommons sessions are, as I read here, again, the new analytics, it reports differently because how the website was made. So if you remember in 2019, we had a completely different website. So the better way to compare it would be 2023. Now, of the sessions, they're also like, the way the website's built, when you go on to bibliocommons, like you use our federated search to find something, you click out to go into bibliocommons, then you need to go click back in to go on the website. So every time you go to use a new book, you're going into a new bibliocommons session to search it. So fundamentally, it's kind of built a little differently, so which would change those metrics.
Okay. Well, you just answered my second question, because that's what I was going to ask you about is how are those metrics triggered? And so that clarified that. So thank you very much. I'll go back to the team for any further questions or comments before I call for a motion to receive the report. Oh, I have one last comment. The report's fantastic. Thank you. The metrics are terrific and they're very, very useful. Please keep it up, and congratulations to whoever was involved in this. And I did listen to the question from Rebecca.
Sorry, just going off of what Celso asked earlier, is there a way to track your new card holders by age, and not specific ages, but by either children or adults?
Yeah, I mean, I forget the exact age threshold, but yeah, if you're a child, you get a children's card because you can't access everything in our collection.
Yeah.
So is that a breakdown that you're looking for? Is card holder by age?
I don't know if it would be useful to everybody else. Again, just in that, just in the spirit of seeing, also because you have it by location as well, just seeing, where there are more children, where just more activity is happening in that spot. And so if it's possible and easy, and if it's applicable and useful to everyone else, I think it would be kind of cool to see.
So we would show children and adults. I would say that it will come with an asterisk because I do know that a lot of families don't want to deal with multiple cards.
Yeah, I never did.
Yeah, I remember those days.
But we can still reflect it and just keep that in mind that it's not necessarily a true reflection of children usage, but it does tell us a story in and of itself as long as we use that caveat. Yeah.
This is what happens. You open like the door to data, and then we're all like, more.
Yeah.
Like Cookie Monster of data. Yeah.
Well, the good news is we said more, and we got it. So thank you once again. It's a great report. Can I get a motion to receive this report, please? Thank you, Rebecca, seconded by Celso. All in favor? That's carried. I'm going to ask your indulgence. I'm going to recess the meeting until 8:05. I'm going to go find my iPad because I can't get my agenda I know that eScribe is a little more stable on iDevices, so I'm going to go get that and see if that helps, because right now I do not have an agenda, and every time I try to sign on, it crashes on my town computer. So I'm recessing the meeting till 8:05. Thank you. Just give Ray a chance to come back. Is Paul Damaso on the line? Hey, Paul. Nice to meet you.
Hey, Counselor. I've been holding pens, so just patiently listening.
Do you want to give it, take us, well, why don't we go back in session? Did you plan on introducing yourself tonight, or?
I think just at the end of the meeting, Tara was just gonna kind of do a quick intro.
Oh,
But I'm happy to let you guys do your business, and I'll sit in the background. That's totally fine with me.
Okay. Okay, I'm calling this meeting back to order. Thanks for the recess. I now have a working device, so I have my agenda back in front of me. We've just concluded 7.4. We're moving on to 7.5. That is the OPL partnership policy. Tara, did you want to give us a basic insider's snapshot on this?
Sure. The next few agenda items are related to policies. So as you all know, we bring policies when they're due for review or where different circumstances call for them to be reviewed outside of our schedule. One that was up for review this year was the partnership policy. So we took a look at it. We had conversations with different staff members who are part of the front line for working with partnerships. And we did make some tweaks related to that. We provided more clarity around who can approve different levels. We provided definitions of what a formal and informal partnership is. We also provided more clarity about who we partner with and how we prioritize some of that as part of this policy. And I'm happy to take questions. Feedback.
Questions for Tara? We have Meredith would like to ask a question. Go ahead.
I guess more feedback. Typically when we do these policy review, it's really helpful when changes are tracked or highlighted, and it was really hard to tell what was tracked, and even in the summary it wasn't really outlined what the differences were. So if I could, in future, if there's things like that, if we can just be marked in red or highlighted, then it'll help us understand what we're looking
for. Apologies, you're right, we do normally do that.
Ray, you have the floor.
Just a comment on that. With town council, when we get policies, it's in red, it's stroked out and it's red, and the changes are done, and it's very clear and concise. Maybe Tara, you might want to talk to the town staff and how that's done on the program. But it's a lot easier to read, so you might want to follow up with town staff on that one.
Will do.
Thanks, Ray. Further comments or questions? Motion to receive for feedback, please. And you got a little bit of feedback. Ray, and seconded by Rebecca. All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Same thing for the OPL fund development policy. It's being presented to us for feedback. Does anybody have any comments or questions?
I will acknowledge there's a typo. We've been having some eScribe issues in terms of what we're submitting and how we update and where it's updating. So I apologize. You noticed.
Well, I can't understand that there be eScribe issues. Okay, can I get a motion? Oh, sorry, we have a question from Meredith.
So maybe this was the typo, but it on page 1, it mentions 150 requiring approval for 150, and then on page 2 under comment options, it mentions valued under 250. So I wasn't sure if that was the discrepancy.
That exactly was the discrepancy. We were playing around with different numbers through conversations with the town about what to recommend. It is the 150 that we're recommending, and some of that comes from conversations that we had with fundraisers in Oakville who have run successful capital campaigns. And one of the learnings that they had is originally they had lower amounts, and they found that it caused some struggle in terms of working with individuals who want to donate money, and you have to go back to the board, and it slowed things down and caused some relationship building issues with some of those donors who just want to work through it. And so we identified through conversations with the town that 150 is probably more reasonable than the lower. I think we had 25,000. And so that's what we're bringing forward for discussion.
And I would agree of the higher level makes sense. I also had a follow-up question on Appendix A about acceptance of planned gifts. And so as I was reading it, I was thinking, you know, if somebody wants to leave the library $150,000 in their will, does the board need to approve that? You know, like if the gift has been made, or maybe there's circumstances where there would need to.
I think that's in there because sometimes we get, we've gotten planned gifts with very specific desires to do it. And we've had to go back to the family and have conversations about, well, we can't really do that. So I think that's really that point. It kind of gives us that conversation piece or that piece in the policy to be like, we thank them. However, giving us $100,000 and $250,000 to buy a grand piano, which probably costs more than that, to go in Central may not be something that we're willing to really do. So let's have a conversation. It just gives us a point of conversation in a policy.
That helps to clarify. Thanks.
Thank you. Would you be prepared to move the receipt of this item, please? Thanks. Moved by Meredith. Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Rod. Further comments or questions? All in favor? That's received. Thank you. Okay. Fund development framework. Again, the same thing. It's here for our comments and feedback. Is there comments or feedback for this? Are there comments or feedback for this?
This is the one policy that rules them all.
The lord of the policies. Not seeing any. Oh, Ray, did you have a question or you want to move it? Move receipt by Ray, seconded by Meredith. Thank you. Last chance for comments, questions. All in favor? That's received. Thank you. Thanks for the work on that, guys. That's great. Fleet services service level agreement to be approved for our one fleet item.
Yeah, so I did attempt to address the three issues that came up, which was bodywork repairs, insurance, and trying to nail down timelines. As was discussed last time, nailing down timelines with Roads and Works is a bit challenging. They support a number of other external groups as well. So I got them to commit to do their best, which I think, and they're very good with communicating, and like all town departments, we work together quite well. But I did put in a statement and they were comfortable with that statement. So I'm hoping that meets the board's needs.
Who raised that? That was Celso. Was that you raised that? Are you satisfied with that? Are you satisfied with that change?
Yes, absolutely. Just want to thank you for the flexibility in working with town to get that in. So I'm moving it.
Great. Thanks, Celso. That's great. Seconder? I see Avis keeps trying to get her hand in there and I keep missing her because she's on the wrong side of the screen. So I'll take Avis as a seconder. Further comments or questions? All in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Q1 2024 OPL goals update. Tara?
Yeah, so this is my first quarter update to the OPL goals that were approved by the board in 2023 for 2024. I changed up how I was doing it. So this time I provided a very clear Q1 update, and I'll continue to add on to that. I did want to touch on a couple points. I'm going to talk about where we are with the central project in my CEO update. But I did want to talk a little bit about the launch of the customer satisfaction survey. We have seen a good response to that, and it's been really interesting to get some of the feedback. And you'll see I've kind of created 3 buckets about where we're getting the most majority of the feedback. Overall, it's very positive, but it's also very good, and we appreciate when people take the time to provide comments or complaints. We can't improve if we don't know. So programming is one, and again, speaks to tweens and seniors seem to be 2 groups that they feel that we should explore more. So we'll be looking at that. Collections is always a bit of a challenge because everybody has what they would like to see. So we do see more about the library of things and essentially loaning up puzzles and board games and those types of pieces. They provide their own challenges in terms of keeping them at a certain standard to be loaned out. And then also we saw British authors and biographies were also popular as well. So again, we'll take a look at that. But just based on some of our conversations and again, some of the recommendations that were in the master plan, I also wanted to flag that a request for longer hours has also come up a number of times, particularly on Sundays. We're only open 1 to 5 on Sundays. And we're seeing a desire to be open similar to our Saturdays, which is the 9:30 to 5. So as part of the budget process, we may look at that, or even part of a future plan. As was highlighted in the master plan, we're going to take a look at the whole I don't know if it's a theory, but the whole, I don't know, about the campus of different branches, and we used to have different hours at different branches, and then we consolidated them all. But it may be time that we look to explore that if different branches are offering different services or expanded services, or depending on the location and the demand, and the tie with community centers where the hours are different, that we may have to make some choices. So you may see some recommendations come forward for your consideration. But I just wanted to flag that, but I'm happy to take questions on any of that. I will flag that I'm very, very excited and pleased with our staff group on DEI and the work that they're doing, and the training that they're building and delivering themselves to their coworkers. I think it's having a great impact, and especially being delivered by coworkers.
That's great. Comments or questions for Tara? I have one. With respect to the customer satisfaction survey that you are referring to, you're aware of the citizen satisfaction survey that came out recently, and the library fell. I mean, I won't say we fell dramatically, but we definitely fell in our ranking from, we used to always be 1 or 2, and now we've dropped. We've dropped in the ranking, but keep in mind, folks, that Oakville services are very highly regarded overall. So we've dropped, but we're still, extremely good, by comparison of other municipalities. But it certainly is eye-opening to see that our value seems to have taken a bit of a hit. And I'm wondering if as part of this process, you can have a look at potentially some of the results of that survey and try to use those in crafting what you're doing in terms of the customer satisfaction survey, so we can drill down into that a little bit more.
I do have some slides on the community satisfaction survey in my CEO update.
Okay, super. Okay.
So I do have them for the board to look at. I actually have the slides that went to council.
Okay. Well, sorry for killing.
But they're tied together. Absolutely, they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that, just to round out what I'm saying, I think it's important that we try to understand what transpired. I didn't look at what the error margin is on that survey, or whether we fall within the margin of error. So it may be much ado about nothing, but I haven't actually dug into it that far, but I think somebody should.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments or questions, Rebecca or Meredith? I'm sorry.
Just on the survey again, I was curious because it's a third party, right? Who's managing facilitating the survey, and
so it's a third. Yeah, it was a third party that provides the platform, but everything comes.
Right. Okay. So I was just curious if there's any particular threshold as far as how many responses you need before you start to consider the feedback as a trend versus a one-off maybe suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have the number off the top of my head, but there is a specific number we use when we put surveys out into the public that we have to reach in order for it to be viable representation of the entire community. And we haven't reached that yet. And when we do, we'll take a broader look at it. It's only been up since March. It will continue to be up. It's always meant to be permanent, and be up there. And we'll do pushes at key points during the year to remind people that it's there at their convenience to provide us feedback. But once we reach a certain threshold, you're right, we can make more assumptions based on it. Right now, we're really looking at, okay, what are overall satisfaction is high based on what's come through. I spent most of my time looking at the open-ended comments and really digging into where people have taken the time to write something, and then seeing if there's trends in there to look at. And again, I think once we reach the end of Q2, we'll bring it back to the board again and probably have a bit more information and be able to make a bit more determinations with potentially some recommendations or some ideas about how we've actually then made changes related to that. Although that's not to say we don't take it. We did have one person who complained that they were really struggling to find our suggestion to purchase form. So that is something we looked at is, okay, well, let's take a look at its metadata to make sure when you're searching for it, it's not fifth, it comes up a little bit more. So those are things we can action right away, because it would make sense. But then basically bigger things, you're right, we do need a broader sense of the community for sure.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Meredith. Rebecca, you're up next.
Just related to that, and part of what we talked about last week, I think understanding just in general how many people it takes, when you're surveying people, because last week, I think when we heard from the committee last week about the strategic plan, I think there was only less than 2,500 people that had answered their survey. And so I think if we look at it in terms of just what is the percentage of people that, you're surveying, and that what do you hope to get out of it? So it's not really a question or a comment, but I just wanted to provide that perspective as well. I think just understanding just what your goal is, in terms of how many people you'd like to survey, because last week we heard a whole bunch of data come back, that really for a town of, thousands and thousands of people, only 2,500 people maybe answered that survey. So, and they took it as, well-founded material. So anyways, all this is to say, I guess we just need to understand how many responses does it take to, affect change. And yeah, that's it.
Yeah, we do look at what makes something statistically viable. And 2,500 for a town survey is actually really good. We'd love to have 25,000 for sure, and we're all active. And please do when the master plan survey launches again, like share that. And I think we'd love to get more validation for it. I actually think it's around 4%. Is what's coming to mind, but I can validate that and follow up is actually what makes something statistically viable.
I think I heard that as well. Yeah, after, because that number kept sticking in my head, and I kind of was asking around, and I heard the same kind of thing, that it's not as high as you would think. That you reach a certain point, and then after that, it really does stay the same, in terms of like the results that you get. So I think.
Just provide a general comment. Question, first of all, I'm assuming this is not a random sample. This is a voluntary participation. So in that case, it's the statistical accuracy is dodgy at best anyway. Because if you're not randomly drawing a sample, then you're not getting a full subset of the community. You'll get only keeners, people who are super keen or super angry. Those are the people that fill out surveys. And I can tell you, having done this many, many times for the different organizations and boards that I'm involved with within the town and the region, the police service and everything else I do, 2,500 is actually really good. We went out halt and wide with with our police strategic planning process, and we got 800 responses after paying for social media, literally begging people, going to events and service clubs and begging people to fill this out. So we actually turned around and recast the whole thing as a public opinion survey and spent considerably more money, but we wanted something that was statistically viable and that actually, had some participation and not just the people who are, excuse the language, pissed off at the police, which is what we were getting in that initial round of surveys. But 2,500 is really good. It may not seem like a lot in a town of this size. We have 200,000 people, but remember you have about 80,000, 86,000 households, I think it is. So, I mean, it's actually, you got to count it by households in terms of the stats. So thanks for that. But good feedback. Further comments or questions? Can I get a motion to receive this for information, please? Thank you. Rebecca and Meredith are moving and seconding this report. All in favor? That's great. Okay, now comes 7.10, everybody's favorite portion of every board meeting, our CEO update. Not overselling this at all. I hope it's awesome. Take it away.
PowerPoint to come up. I feel pressure now.
Yeah.
Updates in there, I think so.
Yeah. Seeing structural steel is enough for me.
Exactly. I know, it's so, I got so many texts when the steel started to go up.
Yeah.
So yeah, jumping into the 60-mile construction project. Construction continues. anybody's driven up there lately, exciting things are happening now that the steel is on site. All the steel is on site. So right now the contractor is looking to make up for the delay. Right now the current estimate is that we will face a 6-week delay from our initial estimated substantial completion time. But again, we'll provide updates. It's still about a year away. So there is time for us to get movement in either direction, to be completely honest. But we'll continue to provide updates as we can. Next slide. So the Parks, Facilities, Recreation, Libraries Master Plan, everybody's very familiar that we completed the OPL board and council workshops Thursday and Monday. The public survey on the draft report will be available from May 28th to June 28th. So look for signs related to that to go up shortly before May or on May 28th. The draft will then be revised based on all the feedback provided by board and council, as well as the public, and then will be brought to council for approval in the fall. But I will provide updates on the updated version as we go through. Next slide. So the new central design project. So the RFP closed. We evaluated all the submissions, and we have identified the top 3. Those top 3 firms have been invited to give a presentation to give some initial concepts about what they would do at the new location at 193 Church Street, as well as a full overview of their recommendations for community consultation. And that'll happen on May 28th. So expect to onboard the firm in June and then have at least an initial project timeline, which I'm hoping to have in place for if not the June board meeting, cautiously, definitely the July board meeting. So we're really excited with the top 3 candidates. I think any of them would be amazing, but we're really excited to meet with them and actually hear more about their concept for that space. Next slide, please. So the community satisfaction survey that Jeff referred to, it's conducted biannually. And includes 2 distinct elements. One is direct telephone calls to individuals, as well as an online survey that was conducted between February and March of this year. OPL has seen a significant decrease in satisfaction over the past 3 surveys, although as Jeff indicated, our satisfaction still remains high, just not as high as it was back in 2019. I did want to frame, though, that the library is only mentioned in one question in that survey, and that question is on the side. So I am talking a little bit with the town about how to get more information. We're not we're seeing a decrease, but we're not necessarily getting reasons for that decrease in there. Although I do have some thoughts. Next slide. So as you can see, public library services is there, and back in 2019, we received a 91% satisfaction rate, and this year we received an 83 satisfaction rate. Still high, not as high as 91. We were always very excited to frequently be number 2. Parks has jumped above us, and that wasn't necessarily surprising during the pandemic. We definitely saw people embrace the outdoors, and we continue to see that trend. What I find particularly interesting about the library, though, is that we still see high rates of satisfaction, but it's the 12% who didn't answer. And I think that speaks to conversations that we have all had over the past coming months about cardholders and non-users and how we really have to get in front of them. And so some of the initiatives, and again, this was mentioned in the last report with the book bikes, and there is a slide a little bit down about how we've shifted how we're going to use book bikes this year, as well as getting out to more outreach events. It's definitely a priority for us to get out of our spaces and have conversations with the residents of Oakville more this year. And we're hoping that that will translate into that card growth or that user retention that we're looking for, so that when this comes again, it's 100% people are answering this. And then we'll know for sure, where we kind of sit with that. It's not surprising that fire, because hopefully the majority of people either feel positive around fire or just don't have anything to say because they haven't interacted with that. But the library, we shouldn't be seeing 12% of non-response.
Right.
So that's definitely something that we're gonna work on this year.
When I asked the question about that at council, I said, well, how would the numbers be affected if that 12% were taken out of the calculations altogether? And the guy told the consultant said by 1%. So we would have seen 83 to become 84%. So it wasn't hugely significant, but it's still a factor for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that was a good point. Yeah, because I wasn't sure that was on my list, was to delve into that a little bit more with the town data.
Right. It'd be interesting to know. So you said there's only one question. I was curious if there's cross tabs that you could analyze the data between users and non-users. You know, because there's those people who are prepared to give an opinion on the concept of making the library versus the people who've actually got hands-on experience with the library. Sort of the same with the fire service, right? You know, it's got a high satisfaction rate unless they don't extinguish the fire in your house, and then they're gonna be really ticked off. So it's a matter of whether they're used, sometimes a matter of the user or non-user. So it'd be interesting to parse the data to see what that looks like.
No, agreed.
Yeah.
Next slide. So this is mentioned in the actual report. Our cognitive care kits launched on May 2nd. If you saw it on social, definitely got positive feedback through social. And I think they're all out, and there's currently wait lists for them. So that's exciting to see that people have seen that we have them and that they're embracing them as we move forward. I think they're a great addition to our collection. Next slide. Battle of the Books. We were really excited to bring back Battle of the Books. It was great to have Central filled with students again. We brought together approximately 50 participants from 4 different schools. And this year, St. Mary's clinched the senior category and St. Teresa's the junior category. So we'll continue to build on this and hopefully grow it back to its pre-pandemic numbers, because they were down a little bit in terms of the number of schools that participated. But we are working with the 2 directors of the library for the 2 school boards about next year's plan. Next slide. So we had a really great slate of events lately. I'm not sure if you've been catching them on social, but we've been really excited. So we held our first OPL Local Authors Showcase. We had 11 talented authors set up in the atrium at Central, all talked about their different books. They had tables set up. They were able to sell their materials. It was really well received, and we got positive feedback both from the authors themselves as well as the attendees. And by having it out in the public at Central and not in necessarily hidden in the auditorium, I think we got a lot of spontaneous interactions as well, which is great. Next slide. We also had Marilyn Lightstone at OPL. Marilyn Lightstone is a very iconic Canadian actress. She has a radio show that's extremely popular in the GTA area. So we brought her in as part of a partnership with Plumleaf Press, which is a local press, and it was really well attended. And that Nocturne was the one that she was promoting. It's actually a collaboration of, well, not a collaboration, a collection of poems that she finds most meaningful. It's actually a beautiful collection if you like poetry. Next slide. We also had a mystery authors event. We had 3 authors come in to talk about their different series, answer questions from people. And again, we held it in the Central atrium, which I think is an amazing space, and we've underused it to date. So I'm really excited that we are venturing out. You get the connection to outdoors, you get the attention of people walking by, and it's just great to be in a space with so much natural light. Definitely something for us to think about with the new Central in terms of even the auditorium, which isn't necessarily as welcoming a space. Next slide. So we also talked a little bit of our Library of Things. So we are launching the seasonal changeover. So all the summer sports kits are now available. We've got lacrosse, cricket, tennis, and multi-sport. As well, the life jackets are now up and available at our Glen Abbey and Iroquois Ridge branches. Next slide. So introducing the OPL ambassadors. In the past, we've applied for the Canada Summer Jobs Grant for our summer reading coordinators. We did decide to tweak that position this year and call them OPL ambassadors. And the goal, as I mentioned, was to get them out in the community. They will be taking our book bikes out. They will be taking them into local parks. They will be taking them to various events that are happening. I believe the Glenorchy Fair is this weekend. We know that there is a Asian Heritage Fair, I think June 1st, up in Ward 7. Ribfest, we're back at Ribfest this year. There is a massive number of events happening in Oakville over the summer, and these students will be out and about with support from staff at various locations, connecting with people, having conversations, signing people up for cards, and just letting them know all the wonderful things that they're missing out on at Oakville Public Library. Next slide. TD Summer Reading is also kicking off in June. This year, the theme is Out of This World. We are resuming our partnership with TD Bank and the TD Summer Reading Club. And so we'll be hosting a number of events throughout the year. We also have an app. So summer reading isn't just for kids. We do offer it for teens and adults as well. And we have, you can log all the books that you read throughout the summer and be eligible for prizes. So no matter what your age, summer reading is a great opportunity for you. Next slide. That time of year, time of quarter again, that we're launching the Friends of the Library book sale, not this weekend, but next weekend out at Central, always a popular event. I think the one we launched in Q1, I was wandering through the children's area, and there was quite the line. There had to be like 25 people waiting in line in children's. Everything was so busy. So that is exciting to see that it's still such a popular event. Next slide. And then the last slide is just a reminder that we do also continue to host virtual author events. So we do have a number of ones that has already happened in May, but then a number of ones happening in June. And so every month, these are available to public libraries who sign up for this different platform, which I think allows us to offer a wide range of author talks in a way that we wouldn't necessarily be able to do otherwise. So yeah, happy to take questions on any of that.
Great. Questions board. Celso, you have the floor.
In the context of cardholder satisfaction, I think you all must have heard news. Toronto Public Library cardholders are allowed to go to CN Tower and the aquarium and different places in Toronto for free, presumably. I don't know the details. I suspect there's some conditions there, but the question is there, and maybe that's a long shot, but I suspect this drove a lot of cardholder enrollments as a result when this hit the news, because it's a very attractive offer, right? Very expensive proposition. So is that something that we can take advantage of in any ways?
We can certainly reach out to TPL about how that is situated, and then potentially reach out to see whether or not they would be interested in collaborating outside of Toronto, whether or not they want to expand that out. We did see success. We do partner with Conservation Halton, as well as the provincial parks, and we have those passes that are available. So that is something that we have brought in. And then I think we have had conversations with various other, the Royal Botanical Gardens and other places as well in the local area about whether they're interested in that. Some are, some aren't. But you're right; it's absolutely worth the conversation, and we can follow up with that, because I think that's relatively new to Toronto. Those particular ones. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good suggestion. Thank you. Ray, you have the floor.
Yeah, just to add to that, Tara, might be a consideration of connecting up on a partnership with Tourism Oakville. They've got money, and this whole idea we just discussed about CN Tower and so forth. Tourism Oakville is very progressive, and now with the accommodation tax being put in place, so it's what, 2 years now. They have financial stability, and also they have grant money or money available and partnerships and so forth. So you might want to consider looking at if there's an exploratory meeting with Tourism Oakville on that, see if there's anything doable between the library and Tourism Oakville. So I'll just leave it at that.
Is that Tourism Oakville or Visit Oakville?
Visit Oakville, sorry, using tourism. It's Visit Oakville, yeah, the tourism part.
No, that's good for me to know, because I'm actually having a meeting with, is it Rebecca?
Rebecca.
Yeah, I think next week. So I
Oh,
will
good. Good. Pick her brain.
Yeah,
She's a great resource.
Further comments or questions? Meredith.
Yeah, great report. You always have such exciting updates to share with us in the CO, so it's definitely a great way to end. I just had one really small request. You always start off each CO presentation with an update of the 16-mile progress, which I appreciate. I was wondering if it would be possible to request that that's a standing item in the written report as well, just so we have a chance to see it and absorb it before the meeting.
Yeah.
Yep, will do.
If we could add that to the newspaper program, that'd be great. Yeah. Another great suggestion. Thank you. Further comments or questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion to receive the verbal report, please? Well, I guess the report. Meredith and Celso, thank you. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, members of the board, we have concluded our in-public portion of today's meeting. We have one item, which is a confidential item, 8.1, and we do need to go into session close to the public for that purpose. Madam Committee Clerk, could you provide me with read the appropriate wording into the record for why we're going into closed session? I don't have it in front of me.
Yes, we'll be going into closed session for discussion on employee relations and negotiations.
Perfect, thank you. Can I get a motion to go into closed session, please? Thank you, Rod. And seconded by, thank you, Avis. All in favor? That is carried. Okay, if we could just give the IT folks a second to shut off our feed to the public. Anybody who is not able to be here should leave the Zoom meeting, and we'll reconvene as soon as we get the okay from IT and the clerk.
Sorry, I actually meant
recording stopped.
Paul as part of my CEO update, and I just got carried away.
That's fine. Only the board can fire you. He can't.
Yeah, I forgot.
So anyway, I just want to introduce Paul. He's the community services called the Masco. We started on Monday, so he's brand spanking new.
Cool.
No, thank you, Tara. And maybe just a quick word. Just yeah, I'm literally wrapping up day 4 with the town of Oakville. So glad to see all of you. Give you a really brief background. I just spent the last 2 years with.
I'm currently in my first of 3 years at
so I just saw
Sheridan,
parks, so I just saw recreation facilities and
kind of
community
fun
development.
to be
But prior to that,
because, you have all great ideas and you're not limited by actual technology. Sheridan College, in the glass department here, they ran a bit of a competition amongst the students. I submitted my design, and then it got sent off. One of the things that I did before I submitted my design to the town was I had a talk with the actual professors to make sure that it was doable.
It'll look not unlike this. The central piece will actually have a wave in it. It's got this oak leaf shape to it. When you look down on it, it'll have a nameplate on there, and then when it comes out of the mold, it looks not unlike this. It'll be on the end of the pipe, and we just break it off, and we put that into cool, and then when it's done, we saw it off right about here, and polish the bottom. So of course this one's been sawn already.
The process of the thing kind of goes like we start out with a spike of glass. We form we take a gather and we form it into kind of a conical piece of glass. Then we get a couple of what we call gathers. We gather glass on the end of a rod, and then we roll it in colored powder, which is basically really finely crushed glass with color in it. Then we melt that in, We roll it a few times just to make sure that it's got lots of solid color on it. What we do is we take molten glass out of the furnace and we roll it in this colored powder, the glass color, and it sticks. It'll stick to the glass, the hot glass. And then what we do is we take it over to the glory hole and we melt it in. So the glory hole gets it nice and hot, reheats the glass. Once it's melted in nice and neat, I'll take it over to Paul there and he'll stick it on a piece. But I want to get it pretty hot so that I don't have I get a nice small trail for him. And then we apply that onto our spike, right? So we have two colors. We have two guys doing it basically. We'll lay on one color and then we'll flip it over and we'll lay on the other color. So we have basically 3 rods of color together, right? Because we don't want the glass to cool off too much after he's done it, after he's formed his spiky bit there. We don't want the glass to cool off too much, and we don't want to have to reheat it over and over and over again. So it takes 2 of us with bit rods to form 2 colors, just so that we can put the one color on and then put the next color on. And then go and melt them together, because if we put one color on and then he melts it together, then we put another color on and he melts that in, it could melt in kind of a weird blurred shape. So if we put them both on at the same time, then they melt at the same rate, and that makes it much more crisp and nicer.
And so now we laid the color on the center bit, and we just have to melt the color in so it becomes one smooth pattern. Because if there's any seams or anything where the color is, when we plunge it into the middle, it's going to catch bubbles there. So that'll be little imperfections in the design.
Then we'll melt them together so that they're smooth without a lot of edges, because if we have a lot of edges, we'll trap air, and we didn't want a ton of extra bubbles or special design of bubbles, so we wanted to make sure that it's all nice and smooth. Then what we do is we extrude it out a bit lengthwise and give it a twist, a nice slow twist, and that gives it kind of that helix of color. In this you can see the spike color, but it has this nice, about 2 revolutions worth of color, in 2 revolutions of twist in color. Then we put a bit of a wave into it, so it looks kind of more like a flame. Grab it, so this puts a nice bend in it. Got it with the tools. We get out of that wavy flame. Then we have a graphite mold that's made out of a big block of graphite. It's a 2-part mold, so it splits in half basically. I'll get a ladle of glass out of the furnace, a big ladle of glass, and we pour that into the mold so it's full. And then the guy who formed the spike with a twist in it plunges that into the mold. So we plunge it straight down into the mold. We let it cool off a little bit so that it firms up, because glass is kind of like taffy, after a few minutes. We wait a little bit longer and it seizes up a little bit more. It's still flexible, but not solid.
Just doing this to cool the edges here, set it up a bit.
Then we pull it out of the mold and we flash it in the glory hole, and that's to even out the heat. But also the flame in the glory hole will polish the one end. So this end here gets its smooth surface from what we call flame polishing.
And so we have to let it completely set up before we put it away. Otherwise, if we put it away too hot, it's gonna deform when it's in the annealer. The internal heat in it will actually deform the piece.
Yeah, the heat actually moves kind of slow, and the internal heat will come out to the external part of the piece, and then when it sits on the grating in the annealer, because the shelves are great, it can actually take on the shape of the grating if it was too, if it becomes too hot. When the annealer itself isn't that hot, even though it feels like it. When you stick your head in there, it feels like it. It's not hot enough to actually deform, but the interior of the piece could be 300, 400, 500 degrees warmer than the actual exterior. And then that soaks out to the outside.
Yeah, the annealers are at like 500 degrees, and these furnaces are at like 2,000.
Yeah. Then we wait for a while until it seizes up. As soon as it stops moving, then we'll break it off and we'll put it in the annealing oven.
Now we're just creating a stress point in the glass. If you, like, this is a really cool part now, so if I hit the glass, all the vibrations are gonna stop at that one point.
Then it'll sit in the annealing oven for about 57 hours. And that cools down slowly. And what it does is it takes all the stress out of the glass. Because all the forming that we do causes inconsistent heating throughout the glass, right? And even though we're flashing it and doing all kinds of things to it to try and even out the heat, it'll still have inconsistent heat through it. So what we do is we put it in the annealing oven and it bathes it in a 550 degrees Celsius for
Recording in progress.
Jessica, you'll let us know when we can resume?
Good to go.
Thank you. Okay, we are reconvening our Oakville Public Library Board meeting in a session open to the public, having just been in a session closed to the public, and I'll entertain a motion at this time to receive the information that was provided with respect to item 8.1, confidential labor negotiations update. Can I get a motion to that effect, please? Celso, thank you. Seconded by? Thank you, Rod. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, members of the board, I know this will be incredibly sad to hear, but we are coming to the conclusion of our meeting today. Before we do that, I will ask if there's any new business to come before the board today. I am not seeing any, so I will ask the committee clerk, what is the time and date of our next meeting? Because it's not actually listed on the agenda.
It's Thursday, June 20th at 7 p.m.
Thank you. So the next meeting is Thursday, I'm sorry, I already forgot what you said, 20th at 7 p.m. at Town Hall. So you've been duly advised. And at this point, it's time to adjourn the meeting. So I'll look for a motion to adjourn. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Rebecca. All in favor? That is carried. Sorry, Meredith, I apologize. This meeting, I don't know why, but for whatever reason, the Brady Bunch squares keep shifting. So when I get used to somebody being in one place, all of a sudden they're all jumbled around again. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your time and attention tonight. To the members of the public that watched us this evening, thank you for your interest in the business of the Oakville Public Library Board. We truly appreciate your participation. If ever you have any questions, never hesitate to reach out. We're always there to answer questions and get feedback from our community. To those members of the board, thank you for participation tonight. To the staff, thank you for being prepared and presenting a great meeting. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.